Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. So I get a lot of questions sometimes about when I squat, my heels don't reach the floor, or this pose would feel really good except that my calves feel super tight. So I thought we'd work into ankle mobility today. And part of that means talking about the fascia in the body. So there's a line of fascia that goes from the tips of the toes all the way into the soles of the feet, across the heel, up and back, all the way up the back of the hamstrings. This is where we're going to concentrate on today, but just for your knowledge, that same line of fascia keeps going all the way back up along the spine and comes up the neck, the back of the skull, and ends in the forehead. So your toe is literally connected to your forehead. So when we do nose to toe or to knee pose, then even if it's not physically touching, it's there in your body. Things that you'll need today to work that line of fascia, or maybe a lacrosse ball or a mobility ball if you have one. Something hard is good, but a tennis ball will also work pretty well. You could get a dowel, or as I have done, I've unscrewed the broom handle from our broom, and that can work as a way to massage. So yeah, let's get into it a little bit. It's going to be a little bit less of a traditional yoga class, a little bit more of a mobility class, but that can always help. So first things first, let's get into the toes. So find a comfortable seat, somewhere that you can sit for a while. And we're going to start on whatever leg works for you, but you have to start to thread your fingers in between your toes. So sometimes it's nice to have one leg out in front so that you give yourself a little bit of support. And then just start threading your fingers between your toes, first from the bottom up. And now, for a lot of people, even just this is going to be a huge stretch for the fascia of the soles of the feet, right? Maybe your fingers don't get between your toes very easily. That's fine, right? That even just doing this is mobilizing. But maybe start to do a little bit of twisting, pointing and flexing, like using your hands to really start to get into the foot, right? Getting into the mobility of the foot, and then keeping those fingers there. You might start to draw circles with the ankles. I have the window open because it's warm, and then of course construction is starting next door. I might have to go close that, but we'll see. Point and flex, and then maybe let go of the toes and start to do even more. You can hold on to the heel and the balls of the foot and do a little bit of mobilizing like this, using both hands to get into that foot. You gotta be careful if you've had injuries, you don't want to push it. And then grab the back of the thigh and start to just do a couple easy knee swings, side to side, circles. And again, just getting into that entire line of fascia, because your calves might be tight, or maybe it's the sole of your foot that's tight, or maybe it's your hamstrings that are tight, and that's not letting you get into the full depth of your ankle. All right, let's switch sides. I was going to suggest doing fingers top down as well, and that's a really good way to get into it, but you can do that on your own time. So let's switch sides. Fingers in between toes. Oh, and one foot is, for me, way harder to get my fingers in than the other one. And you start mobilizing however you need to. Point and flex. It shouldn't feel painful. Discomfort is good, but pain isn't. A couple more moments here. And then maybe you use both hands to get into the foot, mobilizing the heel a little bit. You can even do traction, pulling the heel back a little bit from the balls of the foot. Grab the back of the thigh. A couple little knee kicks or swings or circles. Shake it all out. Okay. And then just find a tall seat. Eyes open or closed. Just notice whatever you notice. There's probably even just a little bit of increased blood flow here. Cool. Okay, come down onto hands and knees. Making your way into a tabletop position, hands outer shoulder width apart or wider. Knees underneath hips, toes tucked or untucked. And then let's just move through a little bit of cat and cow, rounding and dipping through the spine. Just release any sort of tension that you might have here. Okay, and this is where if you have a block or a pillow or something, it's going to be really useful for you. I want you to tuck all 10 toes behind you if you can, unless that means that your heels wing out to the side. Right? Sometimes how pointy your foot is can make a big difference here. So as many toes tucked as you can get them, and you do not have to be a hero with this one, right? Especially if you're not used to doing this sort of fascial stretch. Take as much weight off as you need to, but you're going to start to send your hips back toward your heels. Okay. For some people, this is where you're going to stay, a little bit of weight on your hands. Some people are going to walk their hands back a little bit. Maybe you sit all the way back onto the heels, and make sure that there's a bit of activation. So hugging the legs toward each other. This might feel like, for the lack of a better word, torture for some of you. The deep compression on the fronts of the toes, and then the deep stretch of the fascia along the back line. But this is one of the best things that you can do, especially at least in the northern hemisphere as we get into sandal season. We make really poor footwear decisions, and it can give you plantar fasciitis, or even being at home walking on hardwood floors for 2 months can give you plantar fasciitis. So the stretching and release of the fascia is really good. And the Achilles tendon, right, that attaches your calf muscles to your leg actually wraps around underneath right here onto the heel. So you're getting into all of that, right? Getting that really deep stretch. Last couple breaths here. I find the longer the more I talk through it, the less more distracted you get from the tension. Okay, slowly start to unwind. Come back out of it. Oh, untuck the toes, and it can sometimes feel really nice to give them a little tap out. Some people enjoy the counter stretch, which would be feet flat, so toes untucked. Send the hips back again. Even this, just sitting on the shins for a little bit, will release. Maybe you bring your hands behind you and start to lift the knees up. It's not good for me, so go where you need to go. A couple more breaths. And now I know this sounds crazy, but tuck your toes again and lift your hips into downward facing dog. I swear it'll feel so good. Ha! Okay, so now we get to flush out the calves a little bit. Pedal the heels. A little wag of the tail from side to side. And then send all the weight over to your right foot, and you might hook the left foot behind the ankle, so you're getting a long, long stretch through the leg on that right side. And you can be bent or straight, right? It's a long muscle group. And then switch sides. Hook the right ankle behind the left, or the right foot behind the left ankle, rather. And then come back to center, both feet, last couple breaths. Hug the upper arm bones toward each other. And then bend your knees, look forward. Take as many steps as you need to come into a standing forward fold. Knees bent, please. Right? Especially now, this is going to help release the calves and the hamstrings. Okay, so knees bent. You might sway a little bit from side to side. I'm looking up just so I'm not muffling the microphone, but you want your crown of the head down. You might clasp opposite elbows with hands. You might even just be resting your hands on blocks, or possibly even elbows on knees for a little bit more support, particularly if your blood pressure is an issue, high or low. Sometimes being inverted this long can be tricky. A little wiggle. And then fingertips to shins. Inhale, a little partway lift. Exhale, let it all go. 2 more.
last one. And then bend your knees, tuck your chin into your chest, slowly start to roll up to standing. One vertebra at a time, slow as you need to go. Until eventually you come all the way up. Couple loops of the shoulders, up, back, and down. Little wiggle or release. All right, let's continue right away, getting into the soles of the feet. Now, if you have a dowel or a broom handle or whatever, you might use that. If you have a ball, then grab the ball instead. I'll demonstrate both. And you just want to bring the balls of the feet, or of the right foot. We'll start probably just 1 foot at a time, up on the dowel. And rather than rolling your feet like pastry, yum, we're just going to go slowly, right, getting into these tender spots. So you can add more weight or less by shifting the weight forward or back. You can feel that. Or even bending the knees will add more weight into the dowel. You can rock your foot or your knee a little bit side to side to massage it. And every once in a while, you're just going to roll down a little bit more and then get in to those places on the foot, into the fascia of the sole of the foot. And some parts of the foot are going to feel maybe fine with this. Other parts maybe not so fine. And again, just slowly getting into the foot. If you're using a ball, it's going to look pretty similar. Right? Although the side to side works a bit better with a ball. And maybe once you get down to the heel, you can give yourself a little rock all over the place. If you're using the dowel, you can do the same thing. And then if you really want to, last couple breaths, get into some pastry rolls. I probably should have taken my daughter's artwork off the end of the broomstick. And then come to standing. Eyes open or better even closed, and just notice whatever you notice from one side to the other, even after that brief amount of time of rolling the soles of the feet. You might notice a difference. You might not. You might notice a huge difference from one side to the other in parts of your legs that don't make sense from just rolling your feet. You might feel less tension. That's the beauty of this. Okay, let's switch to the opposite side. Open your eyes if they're not already. And again, one side is going to feel really different to the other, right? Different side, different experience. So go as slowly, as quickly, as gently, as deeply as you need to. Whoo! There's one of those spots. That's the cool thing about yoga, is it helps you realize, or at least acknowledge, how you react to moments of intensity. Again, you might go side to side. You could add more weight or less. And it's interesting because I had an injury back in February on this leg, and that fascia has been tight to my ankle and my calf. So this is particularly good work for me, and I thought I'd been working on it. Again, if you're on the ball works as well, especially that side to side. And then once you get to the heel, you can really start to dig in a little bit, all the way onto the lateral edge, all the way back, and then maybe do a couple pastry rolls with the dowel, or if you have a ball. Oh, that feels good. Okay, and then when you're ready, come off of it. Again, just stand, eyes closed. Notice whatever you notice. And then flick your eyelids open, come to the top edge of your mat. Inhale, sweep up to the sky. Exhale, melt, forward fold. Fingertips to shins, inhale, lift up partway. Exhale, let it go. And then bend your knees on your inhale. Step your right leg back. Release your back knee to the floor.
or to a chip foam block. I'm just going to get my props off to the side. If you have a pillow or a chip foam block, this is a great place to use it. And then come on up. Hip flexors, not really connected with ankle mobility, but let's get into them anyway, because I don't know about you, but I've been sitting a bit more than usual. Hug the legs toward each other, really squeeze the bum on that back leg, and then shift your hips forward. Particularly if you just did my last yoga class, the progressive flow with Warrior 2, you want to get into the hip flexors a bit. Ground the front heel a little bit more. And then squeeze the bum like crazy on that right side. Okay, slowly shift your hips back as you extend through the front leg, half splits. Hands could be on hips, or you might bring them to blocks or to the floor. You want to try and keep your hips over that back knee though, rather than sending them too far back, because this does nothing, right? You don't have gravity working for you. So let's get gravity involved. Wrap the right hip forward, draw the left hip back. And then let's get into the fascia of that foot again. Point and flex the toes, rock side to side on the heel. If you're feeling more tension through the shins, then yeah, maybe you stay with toes pointed today. Probably most of us are going to want to work toes peeled back toward the face, getting into the calf muscles. Lift belly button to spine and lengthen through the spine. All right, so rather than rounding forward, keep that little bit of extra tension through the hamstrings, and it's almost as if you're trying to pull that front heel back toward you. It might not move, but that activation is really, well, you'll notice what that does. Last couple breaths here. And then slowly inhale back, step back into standing forward fold. I guess step forward rather, into a standing forward fold. Little wiggle, little bounce. Inhale, lift up partway. Exhale, let it go. Inhale, step your left leg back. Release your back knee to the floor or to your chip foam block. And then come on up to half kneeling. Right, hug the legs toward each other. Squeeze the bum on that left side. Shift the hips forward. Getting into the hip flexors on that back hip a little bit more. Keep squeezing the bum like crazy. Maybe you deepen it a little bit if you wish, or just stay more upright with me, keeping it super active. Last breath. Good. Shift the hips back, extending through the front leg, half splits. Hands could be on hips, right? And then the more you send the hips back, but send the upper body forward, then the more you're going to get into the hamstrings without sending the hips down, right? It's back rather than down. Maybe you bring hands to blocks or any props or the floor, and then wrap the left hip forward. Draw the right hip back. Let's point and flex through those front toes before we get too static. Rock side to side on the heel. Then belly button to spine. Peel those front toes back toward your face even more. Flare the toes as wide as they will go today. And then almost feel like you're dragging the front heel back toward you. Last couple breaths here. And slowly inhale, ripple forward again, step into standing forward fold. Little wiggle, little sway. Fingertips to shins, inhale, lift up partway. Exhale, let it go. Inhale, sweep all the way up to the sky. And exhale, hands to prayer. Release, shake it out a little bit. Okay, let's come back to our calves. If you have a block, this is a really great place to use a block. I kind of forgot to mention this at the start. If you have a couple books that you can stack, or even your ball is not going to be as deep, but we want somehow a way that we can stretch the calves. You might even bring your toes up to the wall and then heel to the floor. So whatever prop you're using, if it's a wall or a book or whatever, bring the balls of your feet all the way up on top of the block and then heel down to the floor without locking out that knee, right? So a little buoyancy there. This might be enough of a calf stretch and sole of the foot stretch for you. If you would like more, then you just gently step the back leg forward as much or as little as you need to. And then you can play with straightening or bending that knee a little bit, right? Whether you're targeting the ankle, right, the insertion of the calf muscles, or straightening it, that's more at the origin, up at the knee. Last couple breaths on this side. The important thing being that that heel has to be in contact with the floor. Otherwise, if you're hovering, your ankle or your calves are working rather than just lengthening. Okay, gently step off of it, shake out a little bit. Again, maybe you notice a sensational difference between one side or the other. Then we'll switch sides, balls of the opposite foot onto whatever you're using, heel down to the floor. Maybe you step forward a little bit with the back leg, deepening the stretch. And then make sure that your posture is good. I just noticed myself kind of just standing kind of like this, right? So belly button is fine, shoulder blades on the back, right? Nice tall posture. And then maybe you play with bending or straightening that knee, and the movement might be minimal, right? Might be really subtle, but you'll notice a difference in the stretch. Last couple breaths here. And very gently back out of it, shake out a little bit. So we've done soles of the feet, we've done calves, we've done hamstrings. Let's maybe try a little flow into downward facing dog and see how it feels now. So top of the mat, inhale up to the sky. Exhale, forward fold. Even this forward fold might feel a little bit more spacious for you. Inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, fold, bend your knees, plant your hands, step back to plank. Exhale, lower all the way or partway to the earth. Inhale, little mini back bend. And now tuck the toes. Exhale, up and back. Downward facing dog. Maybe this feels quite a bit different for you today. Or at least compared to the first one we did. Maybe you have more length, more space on the back line of the body. Maybe not, and that is totally fine too. Bend your knees, look forward. Walk, step, or hop to the top edge of the mat. Inhale, lift up partway. Exhale, fold. Heel and toe the feet apart quite a bit wider and on an angle, so your toes might be off the edge of your mat. And as you inhale, sit down into squat or malasana. Okay, so here, if the heels are lifted, try taking your feet wider and turned out more, and that will help release the heels a little bit more. If this is not where you want to be today, then by all means, right, take a wider squat. Rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. You can also take a supported variation if you'd like to. And this can be a really fantastic place to stay, especially if you are pregnant. You might spend 10 minutes here. Just pause the video and set a timer. But see how this feels. Maybe it feels a little bit more accessible after all the work we did through the feet, the calves, the hamstrings. Press your elbows into your knees, wrap your shoulders onto your back. And can you think of de-weighting your big toes here so that you're not rolling into the arches of the feet? Oh, last couple breaths. Good. It's never a fancy transition. Bring your hands behind you, sit down, shake out your legs. A little windshield wiper of your knees. All right. And then swing your legs whatever direction you need to. We're going to roll down onto the back.
Hug your knees into your chest. Take a little rock from side to side. You might draw some circles here with your femurs and the hip sockets, just mobilizing a little bit more. I mentioned that progressive flow class. So again, if you've just done that one, let's do a little bit of a hip release. So left foot comes to the floor, cross your right ankle over top of the left thigh, knee out wide, right ankle really active. This might be enough for you. If you want to deepen it, you might bring a block underneath that foot, or maybe you just use your core strength to draw your legs toward you. You could use a strap behind that left thigh, or maybe you interlace your fingers. A few more breaths here, letting everything release. You might be still, or you might rock a little bit from side to side and see if there's somewhere that feels a little bit more interesting. One more inhale. One sweet exhale. Gently unwind your legs, shake them out a little bit, and then cross your left ankle over top of your right thigh. Again, the sole of the foot might just stay on the floor. You could gently press the thigh away from you. Maybe you de-weight the legs. Just using the strength of your core, you could rock a little bit side to side. You might bring a strap behind that right thigh. You might interlace your hands. And try not to have tension up through the neck and shoulders, right? As much as possible. Release the shoulder blades to the floor. Notice where your mind goes. And that's as much an instruction for me as it is maybe for you. Last breath here. And then unwind the legs, shake them out a little bit. If there's anything else you feel like you need before your rest, maybe a happy baby or some sort of spinal flexion or extension, feel free to go where you need to go. And then think about where you would like to go for your rest, whether you're flat on your back, legs bent or straight. You might rest on your side or in child's pose or in a seated meditation. Once you've found your pose of rest, for 3 breaths, inhale deeply through your nose. Exhale, sigh your breath. A couple more. Stay longer if you can. 5, 10 minutes, as long as you are able to. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.